I was sitting in my truck outside the Ace Hardware on Route 9. The air conditioning was fighting a losing battle against July. I had the window down a crack, and I could smell the asphalt baking. I was waiting for my son-in-law Mark to call me back. He had sent me a text about an hour earlier. It said, "Call me when you get a minute, Dad. Important family stuff." He called me Dad now. It took him 8 years to get there. At first, he called me Mr. Cartwright. Then he called me Bill. Then, somewhere around the time my granddaughter Lily started walking, he switched to Dad. I thought it was sweet at the time. I thought he finally accepted me. Now, I know he was just getting comfortable. My name is Bill. I am 69 years old. I have been retired for 4 years. I spent 37 years as a project manager for a commercial roofing company in Northern Virginia. I built shopping centers and schools and one hospital expansion in Fairfax. I worked hard. I missed birthdays and anniversaries and parent-teacher conferences. I told myself I was doing it for them, for my wife Ellen, for my daughter Rachel, for my son Tommy. I told myself the money would make up for the empty chairs at the dinner table. It never does. But you keep telling yourself that because the alternative is admitting you failed them in ways money cannot fix. Ellen and I bought the lake house in 2004. It was our dream. A small A-frame on the shore of Lake Anna. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. A dock that needed work every spring. A wooden deck that faced west so you could watch the sunset over the water. We drove up there every weekend we could. We took the kids there for summer breaks. Tommy learned to fish off that dock. Rachel learned to swim in that cove. Ellen and I would sit on the deck after the kids went to bed and drink cheap wine and talk about nothing important. Those were the best years. I did not know they were the best years while they were happening. Nobody ever does. Ellen passed away 6 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. It took her in 11 months. She was 62. The last month, she was in hospice at the lake house because that was where she wanted to be. The hospice nurses came every day. Rachel was there every afternoon. Tommy flew in from Colorado for the last week. I held her hand when she went. It was 3 in the morning. The room was dark, except for the light from the dock reflecting off the water. I remember thinking the lake looked peaceful. I remember thinking I would never sit on that deck again without feeling her absence. I was right about that. After Ellen died, I kept the lake house. It was paid off. The main house in Fairfax was paid off too. I had my pension and my Social Security and a small 401k that I had not touched. I was fine. Not rich, but fine. I could afford to keep both places. I told Rachel and Tommy that the lake house would stay in the family. Someday it would be theirs. I wanted them to have it. I wanted their kids to have the same summers I gave them. That was the plan. That was always the plan. Rachel got married to Mark in 2012. He was a financial advisor. Good job, good smile, good with people. He came from a family in Pennsylvania. His parents were retired school teachers. His father had emphysema from smoking for 40 years. His mother was his father's full-time caregiver. Mark was an only child. That should have told me something. Only children who become financial advisors and marry sweet girls like my daughter are usually hungry for something. I did not see it then. I only saw that he made Rachel laugh. That was enough for me. Tommy moved to Denver in 2015. He worked in renewable energy. He married a woman named Sarah who had 2 kids from a previous marriage. They had one more together, a boy named Eli. Tommy was a good father, better than I was. He was present. He showed up. He called me every Sunday. He sent pictures of Eli in the bathtub and at the zoo and asleep in his car seat. I was proud of him. I was proud of both of them. But Tommy was 3,000 miles away. Rachel was 30 minutes away. So Rachel and Mark and Lily became my center. After Ellen died, Rachel started coming by the house more often. She would bring dinner. She would sit with me in the living room and watch the news. She would ask me if I was eating right and taking my blood pressure medicine. She was trying to take care of me the way Ellen used to. I let her because I did not know what else to do. I was not good at being alone. I had gone from my mother's house to a college dorm, to an apartment with roommates, to a house with Ellen. I had never lived by myself. The silence in that house after she died was like a physical thing. It pressed on my chest. It followed me from room to room. Mark started coming around more too. He would help me with things around the house, fix a leaky faucet, replace a broken garage door spring, help me carry a new water heater up from the basement. He was useful. I appreciated that. I started thinking of him as the son I never had. That was my mistake right there. That was the door I opened. Because once you start thinking of someone that way, you start giving them things you should keep for yourself. It started small. He asked if he could borrow my truck to pick up a piece of furniture. I said yes. He asked if I could help them with a down payment on a new car. I said yes. He asked if I could watch Millie for a weekend so they could go to a wedding in Charleston. I said yes. I said yes to everything, because that is what fathers do. That is what grandfathers do. You give. You do not keep score. You do not ask what you will get in return. That is not how family works. Except Mark was keeping score. He was keeping very careful score. I just did not know it. The first time I felt something wrong was 2 years ago. Thanksgiving. We were all at my house in Fairfax.
Rachel was in the kitchen making gravy. Mark was in the living room on his phone. I walked past him on my way to get another beer from the garage. He did not see me. He was looking at something on his screen. His face was different. It was hard. It was calculating. I saw that face once before on a contractor who was trying to hide the fact that he had overcharged me by $15,000. It is a face that says, I know something you do not know, and I am going to use it. I told myself I was imagining things. It was the holidays. Everyone was tired. I opened my beer and went back to the table. The second time was 6 months later. Rachel called me crying. Mark had lost a big client at work. They needed money. They were going to miss a mortgage payment. She was ashamed to ask. I told her not to be ashamed. I told her that is what family is for. I sent her $15,000. I told her not to pay me back. She said, "Thank you, Dad. I love you." Mark sent me a text later that night. It said, "You are a lifesaver." That was all. No thank you in person. No call. Just a text. I told myself he was embarrassed. I told myself he would make it up to me in other ways. He never did. The third time was last Christmas. Mark sat me down in his living room. Rachel was in the kitchen. Lily was upstairs playing. He looked me in the eye and he said, "Dad, we have been thinking about your future." He said, "You are not getting any younger."
He said the lake house is too much for one person to manage. He said, "We want to help you." He said, "We think you should sell the lake house and move into a smaller place closer to us." He said, "We can take care of you." I sat there and I listened, and I felt something cold move down my spine. It was not concern I heard in his voice. It was not love. It was something else. Something hungry. I told him I was not ready to sell the lake house. I told him it meant too much to me. I told him Ellen and I built that place together. I told him I was not moving anywhere. Mark smiled and said, "Of course, Dad, we understand. Take your time." But Rachel was not smiling. She was looking at Mark with an expression I had never seen on her face before. It was not disagreement. It was fear. She was afraid of him, or she was afraid of something. I did not ask. I should have asked. I drove home that night, and I sat in my truck in the driveway for 20 minutes before I went inside. I sat there in the dark, and I thought about Helen. I thought about what she would say. I thought about how she always saw things before I did. She would have known what was happening. She would have stopped it before it started. But Ellen was gone, so I was alone. The call came on a Tuesday morning in April. It was Rachel. She was crying. She said Mark's parents lost their lease. Their landlord sold the building. They had nowhere to go. They could not afford a new place on their Social Security and his father's medical bills.
Mark wanted to know if they could stay at the lake house for a few months until they found something permanent, just until they got back on their feet. Rachel said she knew it was a lot to ask. She said she would understand if I said no. But she said, "Please, Dad, they are old, they are sick, they have no one else." I said yes. Of course I said yes. What else was I going to say? They were family. Mark's parents were not my family, but they were his family, and he was my daughter's husband. That made them something. I did not want to be the man who said no to old sick people who needed help. I am not that man, so I said yes. I told Rachel they could stay for 6 months. I told her I would not charge the rent. I told her they just needed to take care of the place, keep it clean, pay the utilities. That was all. Rachel said, "Thank you, Dad." She said, "I love you." She said, "You are a good man." I believed her. I wanted to believe her. Mark's parents moved in on a Saturday. I drove up to the lake house to meet them. I brought a pot of chili and a case of beer. His father, Harold, shook my hand and thanked me. He said, "This is a beautiful place." He said, "We are so grateful." His mother, Marjorie, hugged me. She smelled like dust and Vicks Vapor Rub. She said, "God bless you." I felt good about it. I felt like I had done the right thing. I showed them where everything was: the breaker box, the water shutoff, the key to the shed. I told them to call me if they needed anything. Then I drove back to Fairfax, and I did not think about the lake house for 3 weeks. I should have thought about it. I should have been up there every weekend. But I trusted them. That was my crime. I trusted people who did not deserve my trust. I have done that my whole life. I assumed everyone thought the way I did. I assumed everyone gave the way I gave. I assumed everyone loved the way I loved. That is not true. Some people love only themselves. Some people take and take and take, and then they convince themselves they earned it. The first sign came in May. I called Harold to ask how things were going. He said great. He said they had settled in. He said they had made a few small changes. I asked what kind of changes. He said they moved the furniture around in the living room. They put the couch facing the lake instead of facing the fireplace. That was fine. That was nothing. Then he said they put some of their things in the spare bedroom closet. That was fine too. I told him to make himself at home. I did not ask him what things. I did not ask him how long they planned to stay. I did not ask him anything important because I did not want to seem like a landlord. I wanted to seem like family. The second sign came in June. I got a notice from the electric company. The bill had doubled. I called Rachel. I asked if Mark's parents were running the air conditioning nonstop. She said she did not know. She said she would ask Mark. She called me back an hour later and said Mark said his parents were being careful. She said maybe there was a rate increase. I checked online. There was no rate increase. I let it go. I did not want to cause problems. The third sign came in July. I drove up to the lake house to check on a leak I had noticed in the roof over the back porch. I did not tell anyone I was coming. I just went. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, I saw a truck I did not recognize. A white Ford F-150 with Pennsylvania plates. There were 2 men unloading boxes from the bed of the truck. They looked like movers. I walked up to the front door and I knocked. Harold opened the door. He looked surprised to see me. He looked nervous. He said, "Bill, we did not know you were coming." I said, "I came to fix the roof." He said, "The roof is fine." I looked past him into the living room. The furniture had been moved again, but it was not just moved. It was replaced. My leather couch was gone. My recliner was gone. The oak coffee table Ellen and I picked out together at an antique store in Fredericksburg was gone. There was a new couch, a new recliner, a new coffee table. All of it cheap, all of it ugly, all of it not mine. I asked Harold where my furniture was. He said they put it in the shed. He said they needed more room. He said the old furniture was too big. I walked to the shed. I opened the door. My furniture was inside. It was stacked against the walls. It was covered in dust and spider webs. The leather couch was on its side. One of the legs was broken. I stood there in the doorway of that shed, and I felt something crack inside me. Not break, crack. Like a windshield when a rock hits it. The damage is done, but the glass holds together for a few more seconds before it shatters. I did not say anything to Harold. I did not say anything to the movers. I got back in my truck and I drove to a diner on Route 208. I ordered a cup of coffee and I sat in a booth and I stared out the window. I called Tommy. He did not answer. I left a voicemail. I said, "Your sister and her husband are moving people into the lake house." I said, "I think something is wrong." I said, "Call me back." He called me back 3 hours later. He said, "Dad, you need to talk to a lawyer." I said, "I do not need a lawyer. I need my daughter to tell me the truth." Tommy said, "Dad, please listen to me. Please just talk to a lawyer." I told him I would think about it. I did not think about it. I drove back to Fairfax and I went to bed and I pretended I had not seen what I saw. August was worse. I went up to the lake house for a weekend. I wanted to spend time on the water. I wanted to fish off the dock. I wanted to sleep in the bedroom where Ellen and I had slept for almost 20 years. I called Harold ahead of time. I told him I was coming. He said great. He said they would make dinner. When I got there, Marjorie was cooking something in the kitchen.
Harold was watching golf on the new television they had mounted on the wall. My television was gone. I did not ask where it was. I did not want to know. I went to the bedroom. The door was closed. I opened it. The bed was different. The sheets were different. The pictures on the walls were different. They were pictures of Harold and Marjorie and Mark. Pictures of Lily. Pictures of Rachel. No pictures of Ellen. No pictures of Tommy. No pictures of me. I stood in the doorway of my own bedroom, and I realized I was a guest in my own house. That crack in the windshield got a little bigger. I sat on the deck that night after dinner. Harold and Marjorie went to bed early. I sat alone in the dark. I looked at the water. The moon was almost full. The lake was calm. I thought about Ellen. I thought about the first time we came to this house. She walked out on the deck and she spread her arms out like she was trying to hug the whole lake. She said, "Bill, this is it. This is where we grow old." I told her she was crazy. I told her we could not afford it. She said, "We will find a way. We always find a way." She was right. We found a way. We worked for it. We sacrificed for it. And now strangers were sleeping in our bed and watching our television and eating off our plates. I should have done something that night. I should have told Harold and Marjorie to leave. I should have changed the locks. I should have called a lawyer. I did nothing. I went to bed in the guest room. The room that used to be Lily's room. I slept on a twin mattress with scratchy sheets, and I told myself I would fix it in the morning. But morning came, and I did not fix anything. I made coffee, and I sat with Harold, and I pretended everything was fine. September was when Mark stopped pretending. He called me on a Friday afternoon. He said, "Dad, we need to talk about the lake house." I said, "What about it?" He said, "My parents love it there." He said they are not going to leave. He said they have made it their home. He said they have nowhere else to go. He said, "We think you should sign the house over to them." He said they will take care of it. He said they will take care of you too. He said you can visit whenever you want. He said it will still be in the family. I sat in my recliner in Fairfax, the one that was not at the lake house anymore because Harold had put it in the shed. I held the phone against my ear and I listened to my son-in-law tell me to give him my house. I did not get angry. I did not yell. I said, "I need to think about it." Mark said, "Take your time, Dad, but not too much time. My parents are not young." I hung up the phone. I sat in the dark. I did not turn on any lights. I sat there until the sun went down and the room went black. I called Tommy again. He answered this time. I told him what Mark said. Tommy was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Dad, I have been doing some digging." He said, "I looked at the property records."
He said Mark filed a quitclaim deed last spring. He said Mark listed himself as the owner of the lake house. He said the deed has his name on it, not yours. I said that is impossible. I said I never signed anything. Tommy said, "Dad, check your files. Check your safe. See if you have the original deed." I went to my office. I opened the safe behind the painting of the covered bridge. The deed was not there. I had a folder for the lake house. Taxes, insurance, repairs. The deed should have been in that folder. The folder was there. The deed was not. I searched the whole safe. I searched my desk. I searched the filing cabinet in the basement. The deed was gone. I called Tommy back. I told him the deed was missing. He said, "Dad, Mark stole your house. He committed fraud. He forged your signature. He said you need a lawyer tonight." I did not sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table. I drank coffee. I stared at the wall. I went through every memory I had of Mark, every conversation, every visit, every time he called me Dad. I saw it all differently now. I saw the smile was not love, it was patience. The help was not generosity, it was access. The way he looked at the lake house whenever we were there, the way he walked around the property like he was measuring it, the way he asked questions about the taxes and the insurance and the title. I thought he was being responsible. I thought he was helping me plan for the future. He was planning for his future, not mine. I called a lawyer on Monday. His name was David Strauss. He was a small man with thick glasses and a soft voice.
He listened to everything I told him. He did not interrupt. He did not look surprised. When I finished, he took off his glasses and he cleaned them with a cloth from his desk drawer. He said, "Bill, I have seen this before." He said, "It happens more than you would think." He said, "Adult children and their spouses take advantage of elderly parents all the time." He said, "They use trust as a weapon." He said, "They pretend to love you while they empty your bank accounts and steal your property." He said, "The first thing we need to do is get a copy of the deed from the county recorder." He said, "The second thing we need to do is freeze any accounts Mark might have access to." He said, "The third thing we need to do is prepare for a long fight." He said, "Your daughter is married to this man." He said, "She may not be on your side." He said, "You need to prepare yourself for that possibility." I told David my daughter loved me. I told him Rachel would never choose Mark over me. David looked at me with something that was not pity, but was close. He said, "Bill, I hope you are right." He said, "But I have been doing this for 32 years. I have seen mothers and fathers torn apart by their own children. I have seen siblings who used to play in the same sandbox try to destroy each other in court." He said, "Money changes people." He said, "Property changes people."
He said, "You are not the first father to lose everything to a son-in-law." He said, "You will not be the last." He said, "The question is, what are you willing to do to get it back?" I drove home from David's office and I sat in my truck in the driveway. I did not go inside. I sat there for an hour. I watched the neighbors walk their dogs. I watched a kid ride his bike down the sidewalk. I watched a woman bring in her garbage cans. Normal people living normal lives. Not me. My life was not normal anymore. My life was a crime scene. I went inside and I called Rachel. She did not answer. I called her again. She did not answer. I called her a third time. She answered. She sounded tired. She said, "Hi, Dad." I said, "Rachel, I need you to tell me the truth." She was quiet. I said, "Did you know Mark filed a deed putting the lake house in his name?" She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Dad, I can explain." I said, "Explain right now." She said, "Mark thought it would be easier if the house was in his name. He said it would protect the house from your medical bills. He said if you ever had to go into a nursing home, the state could take the house. He said putting it in his name would keep it in the family." I said, "Rachel, that is not how it works." I said, "That is not how any of this works." I said, "He lied to you." I said, "He forged my signature." I said, "He stole my house." Rachel started crying. She said, "Dad, he said you agreed to it. He said you signed the papers at Thanksgiving when you retired." He said, "You probably just forgot." I closed my eyes. I pressed the phone against my ear so hard it hurt. I said, "Rachel, listen to me very carefully. I never signed anything. I never agreed to anything. Your husband is a thief. He stole from me. He stole from you. He stole from your mother's memory." Rachel was crying harder now. She said, "Dad, I do not know what to do." I said, "You come home. You pack your things and you bring Lily and you come home. You leave him. You leave him tonight." She said, "I cannot." I said, "You can." She said, "You do not understand." She said, "He will take Lily. He will take everything." I said, "I will protect you. I will hire the best lawyers. I will spend every dollar I have." She said, "Dad, it is not that simple." She said, "There is more you do not know." I said, "What more?" She was quiet. I said, "Rachel, what more?" She said, "Mark took out loans." She said, "He used your name. He took out a home equity line of credit on your house in Fairfax. He took out 2 credit cards in your name. He maxed them out. He stopped making payments 6 months ago. Your credit is destroyed." She said, "I am sorry, Dad. I am so sorry. I did not know until last month. I found the statements in his office. I confronted him. He said he would fix it. He said he was going to sell the lake house and pay everything back. He said he just needed more time." I said, "Rachel, are you telling me Mark stole my identity?" She said, "Yes, Dad." She said, "He stole your identity. He emptied your credit. He took out almost $100,000 in your name, and he is not going to pay it back. He never was." The windshield shattered. I sat in my kitchen with the phone in my hand, and I heard my daughter crying, and I felt my whole life collapse. Everything I worked for, everything I saved, everything I built for my children,
Gone. Taken by a man I let into my family, a man I called my son. I did not yell. I did not curse. I said, Rachel, I love you. I will always love you. But you need to decide whose side you are on. She said, Dad, I am on your side. I said, then you need to testify. You need to tell the police what he did. You need to give them the statements you found. You need to help me put him in prison. She said, Dad, I cannot do that. He is Lily's father. If he goes to prison, Lily will hate me. His parents will hate me. I will have nothing. I said, you will have me. You will have Tommy. You will have your family. She said, it is not enough. I said, it has to be enough. She said, Dad, I cannot. I cannot. She hung up the phone. I called her back. She did not answer. I called her 10 more times. She did not answer. I drove to her house. The lights were off. Her car was in the driveway, but the house was dark. I knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again. Nothing. I sat on her front steps in the dark. I waited for an hour. She did not come to the door. I drove home. I went to bed. I did not sleep. I stared at the ceiling. I listened to the house settle.
I listened to the wind outside. I thought about the lake house. I thought about Ellen. I thought about the last time we were there together before she got sick. She was standing at the kitchen window washing dishes. The sun was coming through the window, and her hair looked like it did when we first got married. She turned around and she saw me watching her, and she smiled. She said, "What are you looking at, old man?" I said, "I am looking at the most beautiful woman I have ever seen." She laughed. She said, "You are full of it, Bill Cartwright." She threw a dish towel at me. I caught it. I still have that dish towel. It is in my drawer in Fairfax. I have not washed it since she died. It still smells like her. Or maybe it does not. Maybe I just imagine it does. Either way, I keep it. The legal fight took 14 months. David Strauss was worth every dollar I paid him. He got the quitclaim deed thrown out. The forensic document examiner proved Mark's signature was a forgery. The bank statements proved the identity theft. Mark was indicted on 17 counts: fraud, forgery, identity theft, elder abuse. The prosecutor wanted to put him away for 10 years. Mark's lawyer got him a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to 3 counts. He got 4 years in state prison. He would serve 2.5 with good behavior. He would be out before Lily started middle school. Rachel divorced him. She had no choice. The evidence was overwhelming. She testified against him in the preliminary hearing.
She cried the whole time. She said she did not know what he was doing. The prosecutor did not charge her. He said she was a victim too. I do not know if that is true. I do not know how much she knew and when she knew it. I do not ask. I do not want to know. Some questions do not have answers that make your life better. The lake house came back to me, but it was not the same. Harold and Marjorie were gone. Mark had moved them to an apartment in Fredericksburg before he was arrested. They left the house a mess. The kitchen was filthy. The bathroom had mold in the shower. The deck was rotting because no one had sealed it. The dock was missing 3 planks. The shed was full of garbage. The furniture was gone. My furniture was gone. They had sold it. The couch, the recliner, the oak coffee table, all of it sold on Facebook Marketplace for pennies on the dollar. I walked through the house after they left. I opened every closet. I opened every drawer. I looked for anything that belonged to Ellen. I found one thing: a small ceramic bird she painted at a pottery place when Rachel was little. It was on the highest shelf in the kitchen, behind a box of instant oatmeal. I took it down, and I held it in my hand, and I sat on the floor of that empty kitchen, and I cried. I cried for the first time since Alan died. I cried until I had nothing left. I sold the lake house 6 months ago. I could not keep it. Every room reminded me of what happened.
Every corner held a memory that had been poisoned. I could not walk out on the deck without seeing Harold in my chair. I could not go in the bedroom without seeing their pictures on the walls. I could not look at the water without thinking about how Mark sat on his parents' boat and waved at me like nothing was wrong. I sold it to a young couple from Richmond. They have 2 kids, a boy and a girl.
They reminded me of us, of Ellen and me when we were young and dumb and full of dreams. I sold it to them for less than it was worth. I told David it was because the market was soft. That was a lie. I sold it to them because I wanted a family to be happy there. I wanted kids to fish off that dock. I wanted parents to drink wine on that deck. I wanted the house to be what it was supposed to be before Mark got his hands on it. I do not know if that makes me a fool. Maybe it does. But I am too old to care about looking like a fool. I care about other things now. Rachel comes to see me every other Sunday. She brings Lily. Lily is 9 now. She does not know the full story. She knows her father did something bad and he had to go away for a while. She does not know he stole from me. She does not know he tried to take her grandparents' house. I do not tell her. That is not her burden. She is just a kid. She deserves to be a kid. I take her to the park. I buy her ice cream. I push her on the swings. She calls me Pop Pop. That is what she has always called me. When she says it, I forget everything else. For a moment, I am just a grandfather, and she is just a granddaughter, and the world is simple. Then she leaves, and I am alone again, and the world goes back to being complicated. Tommy calls me every Sunday. He asks how I am doing. I say, I am fine. He says, Dad, you are not fine. I say, I know. He says, come to Denver for Christmas. I say, maybe. He says, you always say maybe. I say, this time I mean it. I do not mean it. I will not go to Denver for Christmas. I will stay in Fairfax. I will put up a small tree. I will watch Die Hard because Ellen and I watched it every Christmas Eve. I will eat a frozen lasagna. I will go to bed early. That is my Christmas now. It is not sad. It is just quiet. There is a difference. The credit card debt took 18 months to clean up. David helped me dispute most of it. The banks eventually agreed it was fraud, but some of it stuck. Some of it I had to pay because Mark had used my actual card numbers, and the bank said I should have protected them better. I paid. I am still paying. I am 69 years old, and I am still paying for a crime someone else committed. That is the part they do not tell you about getting older. You can do everything right your whole life. You can work hard, you can save, you can plan. And then someone who is supposed to love you can come along and burn it all down in a matter of months. And there is nothing you can do to stop it, except watch. I think about Ellen all the time. I think about what she would say if she were here. I think she would be angry. I think she would be heartbroken. But I think she would also tell me to let it go. She would say, Bill, you cannot carry this forever. She would say, you did your best. She would say, you loved them. She would say, that is not a crime. She would say, the crime was theirs, not yours. I try to believe that. Some days I do. Some days I sit in this house and I look at her picture on the mantle and I believe that I am not to blame. Other days I think, I should have seen it coming. I should have said no. I should have been harder. I should have protected myself. But I did not know how. I spent my whole life protecting other people. I never learned how to protect myself. That is my sin. That is the only sin. Mark gets out in 14 months. Rachel does not talk about it. She says she will cross that bridge when she comes to it. I have already crossed it in my head 1,000 times. I have imagined every possible scenario. Him showing up at my door. Him apologizing. Him asking for forgiveness. Him blaming me. Him blaming Rachel. Him blaming the world. I do not know what I will say to him if he comes. I do not know if I will say anything. Maybe I will just close the door. Maybe I will call the police. Maybe I will sit on my porch and watch him walk away and feel nothing. I hope I feel nothing. But I will probably feel something. I will probably feel the same thing I feel every day. A dull ache. A missing piece.
A wound that healed wrong. The worst part is not the money. The worst part is not the house. The worst part is not even the betrayal. The worst part is knowing that my daughter chose him. She chose him over me. She knew what he was doing, and she did not stop him. She knew he was stealing from me, and she did not tell me. She came to my house and sat at my table and ate my food and hugged me goodbye and drove home to a man who was destroying her father. She chose him. Maybe she was afraid. Maybe she was confused. Maybe she loved him. I do not know. I will never know. But she chose him, and that is something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. That is something I will think about every time I see her face. Every time she says, "I love you, Dad." Every time she asks me for help. I will think about the moment she chose him, and I will wonder if she would choose me now. I sit in my recliner most days, the one I bought to replace the one Mark's parents sold. It is comfortable, but it is not the same. Nothing is the same. I watch the news, I read the paper, I walk to the mailbox and back. Sometimes I drive to the diner on Route 208, and I order a cup of coffee, and I sit in the same booth, and I stare out the same window. The waitress knows me now. Her name is Deb. She calls me honey. She asks how I am doing. I say I am doing okay. She says, "You do not look okay." I say, "Looks can be deceiving." She laughs. She does not know the truth. She does not know that I come to this diner because it is the only place I feel like I am not alone, because there are other people here, other voices, other lives. I sit in that booth and I listen to them talk about their days and their problems and their small joys, and I pretend I am one of them, a normal person with a normal life. Not an old man whose family tore him apart, not a father who lost his daughter to a thief, not a husband who sits alone in a house that used to be full of love. But I am all those things, and I will be those things until I am not anything at all. The lake house is gone now. The money is mostly gone. The trust is gone. The only thing I have left is the ceramic bird Ellen painted. It sits on my nightstand. I touch it every night before I turn off the light. I touch it and think about her. I think about the pottery place, the way she laughed when the bird came out lopsided, the way she painted it bright blue because blue was her favorite color, the way she put it on the windowsill in the kitchen and said, "Now we have a guardian angel." I was not a religious man, neither was she, but she believed in small miracles. She believed in love. She believed in family. She believed that if you gave enough, the world would give back. She was wrong about that. The world does not give back. The world takes. But she was not wrong to believe it. That is what I have learned. She was not wrong to believe. She was just unlucky. She loved people who did not love her back the same way. She raised a daughter who would one day let a stranger destroy her father. She married a man who would